Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I know you've been seated for quite a while, so if I was a Baptist preacher, I might have told you, touch your neighbor and say energy, but I won't. I won't do that. And secondly, you know, when you are a ways down in the program and having so many well-qualified and illustrious individuals speaking, as was the DPM and as well those on the panel, sometimes everything has been said that needs to be said. But like our ambassador said, I think we have a wonderful story to tell in the Bahamas, and I want to tell you a bit of the story about the rebound and the resilience that the Bahamas has shown coming out of the devastation of firstly Hurricane Dorian and as well the COVID-19 pandemic, and they took some of my time, so I'm going to take it. But I wanted to just speak to, we had a lot of discussion about business opportunities and you know, that are available in the Bahamas. I want to talk a bit about the foundation of the economy, the foundational aspects of our system, and what we have been doing to ensure that we set the foundation and promote a stable economic environment in which businesses can be attracted and that they can thrive. But I want to begin firstly by expressing congratulations and gratitude to Ambassador Wendell Jones and the Embassy of the Bahamas for organizing this very timely and relevant event under the theme Rediscovering the Bahamas, the Potentials, Plural, and Investment Opportunities, and so for crafting an agenda and comprising these panels that captures the attention and that is already promoting discussion that will lead to the birth of new ideas and initiatives that will actualize into mutual benefits for the Bahamas and the potential investors. And so I spoke, ladies and gentlemen, about foundational issues, and it is because it is my view that the primary role of government in economic matters is through its policy, its regulation, and its action to facilitate a stable, predictable economic environment within which businesses may thrive. In the Bahamas, the role of government as economic catalyst became even more crucial in the aftermath of the devastating Hurricane Dorian in September 2019, which was followed a few short months later by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, on assuming office in September 2021, the number one priority of the new administration was to safely reopen the economy while managing the ongoing pandemic. In doing so, we also had to deliver the message, tell the story to the business and the financial community, domestic and international, that the Bahamas truly possessed a spirit of resilience that would enable our economy and our people to rebound in short order. And I pause here to say that, you know, at that time, many years ago, we never used to come to the spring meetings of the IMF and the World Bank. We would come to the annual meetings in the fall. But we resolved back in 2022, early 2022, that we needed to get out there and begin to tell our story because there were too many instances where people thought the Bahamas had fallen off the map and never to show our face again. Our goal in that communication strategy was that notwithstanding the run-up in debt and the economic devastation that we had suffered, we wanted to send the message that we would rebuild our economy and our public finances without entering any structural adjustment program. In effect, we were inviting the community to rediscover the Bahamas. On coming to office, we promoted a strategy. You would know that everybody virtually around the world, except those big industrial countries who had big pharmaceutical programs. Everybody was basically devastated by the pandemic, particularly in the Caribbean region. We all saw our revenues suffer, unemployment rise, public debt rise, and the same was in the Bahamas. Some countries took the view that they would enter into austerity programs, i.e. cut spending to put their budgets back in balance. Some took the view that they would raise taxes to put their budgets back in balance. We in the Bahamas decided that we would do neither. We developed a four-pronged strategy where we decided that we will recover by growing the economy, improving our revenue administration, controlling our expenditure, and seeking new sources of revenue. And 3 years later, ladies and gentlemen, we can point to an economy that has bounced back with solid growth, led by tourism and construction. And so real GDP is forecast to grow by 2.3% in 2024, following a growth rate of 2.6% in 2023 and 10.8% in 2022. So we see some moderation in the growth, but still very, very positive and ahead of the Hurricane Dorian and pre-COVID-19 levels. So we have rebounded in terms of growth in the economy. We are forecasting medium-term real growth of between 1.9 and 2.5% between 2024 and 2026. The growth, this momentum is supported by the recovery in tourism, strengthening construction activity, and a pickup in domestic demand. And as the DPM said, and others on the panel, the Bahamas is currently experiencing positive momentum in the tourism sector, where we had 9.7 million visitor arrivals in 2023. And I remember when 7 million was thought to be a significant number. But you know, those have been smashed, and we are anticipating 12 million visitor arrivals in 2024, and I understand that we are well on track to achieve that. Again, since 2021, more than $10 billion, as the DPM has said, in new foreign direct investment projects have been green-lighted in the islands of New Providence, Grand Bahama, Exuma, Abaco, Long Island, Eleuthera, and the most beautiful island in the Bahamas, Cat Island. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I say with this continued expansion of tourism and foreign direct investment, we can expect to witness an increase in entrepreneurial activities and job creation. The new Tourism Development Corporation, through its Tourism Development Fund, will promote resilient and sustainable development of the tourism industry, and indeed that is their mission, resilient and sustainable development. The strong economic performance, ladies and gentlemen, has been reflected in the government finances. I'm happy to say to you that, back in 2021, fiscal year 2021, the government of the Bahamas had a deficit of $1,334 million, $1.33 billion. This year, we're forecast, that was 13% of GDP. This year, in this current fiscal year that we're in, we are projecting a budget deficit of $69 million, 0.5% of GDP. And for those of you who are accountants, I believe that's a rounding error when we have an economy the size of $12 billion. So you've seen that there's been a tremendous correction in the government finances from a $1.3 billion deficit to this year under $70 million, and this was done without the benefit of any structural adjustment program. And early indications are that we are on track to achieve those projections for this year. In terms of the debt, in the midst of Hurricane Dorian, we saw government debt rise dramatically, peaking at 98% of GDP in fiscal year 2020-2021. We've seen that come down dramatically, dropping by 20 percentage points so far, and so we are now in the mid to high 70%, well on track to reach our goal of 50% debt to GDP by fiscal year 2030-2031, as we have targeted in our Fiscal Responsibility Act. And so, ladies and gentlemen, someone asked me, the other day, why is this important? It's very, very important because high levels of debt set off all sorts of alarm bells with all the financial and multilateral institutions. We are executing a debt management strategy aimed at minimizing associated risk and currency refinancing and currency risk. That is, we want to move more of our debt into local currency, smoothing out our maturities so we don't have large balloon repayments, and reducing the financing costs as we deal with more concessional financing. We have a currency that is pegged 1-to-1 to the US dollar that we have maintained since 1970, and that is backed up by some of the highest levels of reserves, $2.9 billion in international reserves as of June 2024. So again, a very, very healthy level of reserves. The Bahamas we are a tourism-dominated economy, but the financial services industry is very, very important to us as well. And so we dedicate a lot of time in promoting not only our domestic financial services, but as well international financial services. The governor is coming up, so he will agree with me that the Bahamian domestic financial sector is well developed, has been a reliable source of funding for the government, been good partners over the years. We like to engage our domestic partners because the cost of borrowing is much lower, and the domestic system features a variety of players, inclusive of banks, pension funds, insurances, etc. Last point I would make in terms of the economy is that inflation everybody experienced high levels of inflation. Ours peaked at 5.6% in 2022, but we have seen it come down to more normal levels. We expect it to be 3.2% this year and 2.5% in 2025. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to share those indicators with you to demonstrate the positive progress of our economy and that we are indeed on the right path to economic stability and resilience. It demonstrates an economy that is able to recover from crisis, and indeed we have I believe, and I may be biased, I believe we have a stable, predictable economic environment within which those of you who want to come and invest in the Bahamas, you can see all of the positives. Again, high per capita income, a very well developed economy in terms of services, 79% of the economy based on services. I said before, and before I hug my tongue, I good? I mentioned that we are a tourism and investment-driven economy, but we pay a very high, we put a high premium on our financial services industry. We promote the Bahamas as a globally compliant, well-regulated, attractive, and competitive financial services jurisdiction. So we balance being competitive with being globally compliant. We collaborate closely, as the director for the executive director, Christina from the Securities Commission said, in the Bahamas. We take pride in the government of the Bahamas collaborating with private sector industry groups. In the case of financial services, the Bahamas Financial Services Board, the Association of International Banks and Trust Companies, the Association of Accountants, collaborating with them, particularly in financial services, to promote our jurisdiction, develop new and innovative product offerings, and ensure compliance with worldwide regulatory standards. And so we are not listed on any adverse list. Some people call them blacklists, some people call them non-cooperative lists. We are not on any of those lists. In terms of the Financial Action Task Force, we are compliant with all 40 of their recommendations, including as it relates to digital assets. And I can say that we are one of few countries in the world, including developed countries, that are fully compliant. And so we are, those of you who might be interested in financial services, know that we have a well-regulated financial services jurisdiction that is competitive, and you have the ability, should you choose, to be able, as Christina said, to sit with policymakers and the regulators to ensure that your concerns are heard and any ideas that you have is incorporated into our strategy. And so, ladies and gentlemen, one of the, I think it was Mr. Honourable who said that some people like to say they're cautiously optimistic about the Bahamas. Is he here? He likes to say he's bullish and optimistic. I, as well, I'm very optimistic and bullish on our prospects. We see how far we've come. I will say that when we first began to have those investor interactions and coming to the IMF and World Bank spring meetings, the conversations weren't as pleasant as they are now. They're more pleasant. Before, when you would tell people, the Bahamas is poised to rebound, they give you this vacant stare. Now they're lining up to have meetings to see how they can do business in the Bahamas. So I'm very, very excited. But we have to temper that optimism with caution for the mere fact that we live in a hurricane zone and we see the devastation that has been wrought. And like my son liked to say, some people, when you say climate change, some people might say, well, I don't believe in climate change. Well, he says, well, call it what you want. But the hurricanes are more frequent, they're more intense, the rainfall tends to be more sporadic, but when it does come, it's intense. So whatever you want to call it, that's what it is. And so we are a keen supporter of being able, of speaking the message of climate change, but also climate finance. And I just want to say a few words about that because we see what the impact has been on our country and what possibly it can be. And so through our Prime Minister, we have vigorously reinforced on the world stage the need to emphasize the harmful effects of climate change on the Bahamas. We have been ranked as one of the top 10 countries of the world regarding our exposure to the effects of climate-related disasters and climate change. And as I said, it affects us in the pocket. Our vulnerability is illustrated by our exposure to the warming climate, the high propensity for hurricanes, and the corresponding increase in high-cost debt. When we have to undertake debt or take on debt for hurricane restoration efforts, the cost is high, and that has a diverse impact on our debt stock and on our economy. And so we believe it's necessary in our development and in attracting investors to emphasize investment in activities that will be resilient, and we also stress the need to have access to adequate, affordable climate finance. So we want resilient and sustainable investment options. We have taken in the Bahamas, a very proactive approach to reduce our vulnerability and improve our ability to respond to climate change. This has included initiatives to strengthen the national regulatory framework, leverage adaptation funding, and increase resilience to energy infrastructure while diversifying the energy mix. It's a very, very important energy reform that we're undergoing in the Bahamas because we know, again, as business persons, that is an important factor in your considerations, the cost of energy. Our goal in our energy reform is to diversify the electricity supply with renewable energy and more efficient generators, and this is expected to reduce the cost of living and doing business in the Bahamas. And this, ladies and gentlemen, we believe will continue to bolster economic growth. The new energy era being undertaken by the government of the Bahamas will aid us in achieving our national determined contribution of reducing greenhouse gases by 30% by the year 2030 and increasing the provision of energy supply from renewable sources by 30% by 2030. And again, I mention this because this represents opportunities for sustainable and resilient development. Priorities of the plan, lowering prices, increasing the reliability of supply, increasing hurricane resilience, ensuring job security, creating new job and training opportunities for Bahamians in a growing sector, providing new opportunities for Bahamian entrepreneurs and investors, including in the diaspora, the introduction of independent power producers, replacing heavy and diesel fuels with lower carbon supplies, and strengthening the financial position of our power producer and, by extension, of the government of the Bahamas. We have, someone mentioned our initiatives in terms of Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Act and our Carbon Trading Act. And all of this is meant to leverage the assets that we have, one of the most important of which is our tremendous seagrass meadows, which we are taking steps to be enabled to modernize. I'm going to not go into all of the financing aspects that we're doing, but we are, long story short, there are tremendous opportunities when we talk about improving our debt profile and our economic prospects, tremendous opportunities in the area of climate finance, which we are investigating. And so I would say, as I close, these are, even though there are challenges, these are exciting times for the Bahamas. Amidst all of the challenges that we face are many opportunities in business and financial services, in energy. Our job within the central government is to build that solid foundation where we have positive growth, predictable inflation, low debt levels that really sets a foundation for businesses to be able to be attracted to the Bahamas and feel confident that when you invest your money, you are investing in a safe environment. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am not ashamed to say I am optimistic and bullish on the Bahamas, and I invite all of you to share that optimism and come invest with us, rediscover the Bahamas. Thank you very much, and good morning.